I got a vibe check on you here, Pat. How many dynasty leagues are you currently in? I know you fluctuated. I've heard you talk about it from time to time, like number of leagues, pair down. So what's your current body count?
I want to say I'm in maybe 8.
Good.
I think it's about 8.
Yeah. I knew you were normal. I knew it.
Give or take one. What about you? Is that around where you come in?
Dude, it's 41 right now.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And only like 3 of them are best ball dynasty. So yeah, Sunday is hell. Sunday is hell.
Oh man. Yeah. The best ball ones. Big fan. Become a big fan of the best ball dynasty format.
Yeah. I mean, I do understand why some people are against it. Like if you were just in like 2 or 3 leagues or even 8, like best ball, it's easier, but it does take a little bit of the engagement out. Like you don't really check it all the time. You know, maybe you miss a waivers here, you miss a waivers there. So I do understand it. So are your rookie drafts popping off already?
Yeah, I've got 3 of them going on right now.
Yeah.
And then my big home dynasty league is Sunday night. We'll all do a conference call for that video call. And that one's fun because it's best ball. Everyone loves the best ball formats. And that one should be good. A lot of live trash talk. So that one will be fun.
Is there a timer on something like that? Can you negotiate? Because usually rookie drafts are about negotiating up and down the board a little bit, or is it just like, hey, fast draft, you got to know who you're picking?
No, we give people a little bit of room. I mean, like it generally, we still get it done in like an hour, but there are trade negotiations that happen during the draft, like guys shooting each other messages and like, hold on, I'm talking to this guy, and we're all just sitting around drinking beers, so it's fine. Like,
what a great idea.
Yeah, it works out pretty well. It's all like everyone knows each other and is friendly, so like no one's gonna get mad if someone's running the clock for 5 minutes,
right. Well, I mean, come on, the OTC mafia in some of these, you're on the clock. Let's go pick. We all know about that. All right, Pat, what I want to talk to you today, Pat Fitz. You say, yeah, I know this is like the biggest debated thing in like fantasy football. Is it Maurice or Morris? Pat Fitzmaurice? Pat Fitzmaurice? I've heard
Morris.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of the first time I ever heard you on a podcast. And, I know you've been around for a long time, but the first time I actually heard you was on I don't know if you remember, there was a podcast called the Breakfast Table Podcast, and you used to guest on
sure.
there.
Yeah, with Pianowski and Salfino.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's the first time I actually heard you, and I'll tell you about that experience in a second. But they used to debate. They didn't know your name, if Fitzmaurice, Fitzmaurice, but they loved you on there. So it always stuck with me since that was my first impression of you.
Well, Alan, my dad's side of the family is from New York, so can you imagine New Yorkers saying Fitzmaurice? I mean, so it had to be Fitzmaurice.
Right. No, so when I heard you on that podcast, and by the way, we are going to talk about taxi squad stashes and some late rounds because everyone's in their rookie draft right now. They want to know who to pick in the late second, early third. We're going to get to all that. But the reason I was attracted to the content that you were doing was because you were one of the first analysts that just wasn't giving out like takes. It seemed like you were really in fantasy leagues. You were like, you knew the practical advice. And I think that there's a distinction between that we see on social media. Oh, I love this guy, draft that guy, fade this guy, sleeper, bust. And we all do it. But when someone can give real life fantasy advice, like what actually happens in these drafts, Pat, I think that what stands out nowadays.
Oh, thanks, Alan. Yeah, I mean, Scott Pianowski, who was on the Breakfast Table pod and now I guess is back to doing it, or rotating with, John and Mike. I think he's always shown in that area as far as like just knowing that you have to have playability out of your player. Like it's, great to have these talented dudes like Isaac Garendo, who runs a 4.3 and has like this ideal size, 6 feet, 221 pounds, but like, when's Garendo going to play? When is he going to be providing anything for your fantasy team? When is he going to be startable for you? Like, it's hard to see that.
Yeah.
And, like that's what we're looking for, like guys who can start for us and help our fantasy teams. And, that's sometimes you have to, I don't know. You can't just say you like everyone because there are a limited number of guys, even in a good draft class like this one, who are actually going to be fantasy, have some fantasy utility.
Exactly. No, it's just, like you always hear the advice where you're on the clock at pick 4. Okay, just trade back one spot. Do you know how hard it is to trade back one spot? Every Dynasty player, Pat, I mean, they listen to Fantasy Pros, they listen to RotoWire, they listen to all the great content out there, and they're smarter than they ever were. You remember, and I know I do, when you could just go on like Fantasy Pros or RotoWire, RotoWorld, and you could just read those blurbs, and you had an edge in your fantasy league. Now that's like paper towels. It's a commodity to have information.
Yeah, so true. That's kind of it. So yeah, everyone's sharp, and just assuming that like everyone, you will do yourself a disservice if you assume that your competitors are stupid.
Right. What do you think the biggest edge is in Dynasty fantasy football nowadays, especially as we hit into rookie draft season? What do you think? How can you strategically gain an advantage?
Oh, good question. I mean,
because I don't know the answer.
Yeah, just figuring out maybe which players the Dynasty community are really in love with, and maybe overly in love with, guys who don't have that clear path to fantasy value, who are just like, I don't know, they've got exotic measurables, or there's something that's like attracting all the Dynasty people, and yet maybe they're just not as practically useful as some less sexy play. Guerendo, exactly. Right? Yeah, like I would beg people not to draft Isaac Guerendo. Like, I'm seeing him routinely come off the board in the 3rd round of rookie drafts.
Oh, I've seen crazies go 210 on him.
And like, I mean, so here's a guy who sat behind Braelon Allen for pretty much the entirety of his time at Wisconsin, transferred to Louisville, was like efficient there on a per touch basis, but was not like a full-time guy at Louisville, like kind of split the load, kind of a straight line guy. Like, I think he's going to be a kick returner for the 49ers. I really do, Alan. Like, people love seeing the 4.33 at a substantial weight. And I'm sure his speed score, I don't know it offhand, but I'm sure it's like 99th percentile, had a 9.97 relative athletic score. People love that stuff. People get excited about guys who blow out the combine. But man, if you look at what he did in his college career, it's a pretty sparse resume.
Do you think that we could start going the other way a little bit, where knowing all these, under the hood metrics, I'll never say it's a bad thing, but when everybody starts moving towards, and it's the proverbial everybody that, the combine, sexy combine guys, right? And then they forget, like, just watch football, understand how real football works. And, we keep going back to Guerendo, but it could be any RB4 or RB3. And, if you were getting these guys a couple years ago in our Dynasty rookie drafts, Pat, we would get like Ty Chandler in the 5th round, Khalil Herbert, no problem. You stick them on your taxi squad for a couple years, and then, they'll be 3 years from now that they actually help you get a win.
Right. And that's it. And I mean, I think, if we're talking taxi squad stashes, like running backs are pretty good ones, because you can never really judge these guys until they get some sort of opportunity. And it's just, we saw all these square peg round hole fits with the running backs in this class. And it was kind of a, so running back class to begin with. It might be 2 or 3 years before some of these guys get some run, but until they fail, they're at least worth your interest, I guess.
Yep. Pat, I'm hearing a little bit of interference with your mic. Could it be your headpiece, your earplug? I'm not sure. Tap on that. Let's get it knocked out of the way now. For a second. Oh no, I don't think it's there. I think it could be that your earbuds. Let's see. Tap on the head of the mic there. See, look, this is how the sausage is made, people. We're gonna figure this out right now on air. Free tech lesson. Give me a 10.9.8, Pat.
10.9.8. Still crackly.
Yeah. Do you hear it too?
I don't. You want me to leave and come back?
No. I don't think you need to. I just think it could be. Tap on your the mic part of your. Yeah. So okay. So it's a little crackly there. Is that unplug, replug. There we go. Yeah, that's it. You got a faulty it's still gonna be. Watch here. You see the tail end of the wire, Pat, right on like where it connects into the short right there. Just straighten that out. That's it. You just need a new wire there. That's all.
All right. Just better? Any better?
Not so much, Pat. Not so much. Hold it straight for a second.
All right. How about that?
It's all right. who's the tech guy at Fantasy Pros? I want you to call him tonight when we get off and tell him to fly over to the suburbs of Chicago and get over there and help you out there. It's fine. Actually, it's not too bad now. It's not too bad.
Okay, good.
All right, there we go.
So if it gets really obnoxious, let me know. I can try to leave and come back. So.
Okay. All right. Let's keep it going, folks, because this is but like I said, it's what's so great about podcasting, and the barrier is lower now with all the StreamYard stuff and, and how it could just push it out to a million platforms. But with that comes a little bit of sometimes some tech stuff. All right. This year, I think that there's been a consensus in the first round, right? Are you seeing in our Superflex rookie drafts, Pat, 2 QBs, 2 wide receivers, more or less make up the first 4, then 2 more QBs, Odunze and Brock Bowers. That's basically your 8 right there.
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily in that order. I've seen Odunze go before Maye and McCarthy at times. But yeah, and Bowers is typically 108. Although I've seen him fall out of the top 8 a couple of times. I've seen Worthy go ahead of him.
Yeah. Oh, Worthy go ahead of Odunze or Bowers?
Bowers.
Okay, let's just even call it 1 PPR premium. What do you think that the thought process is there? Because Bauer seems like a locked prospect. Even if he hits his floor, I mean, he's going to be what, Evan Ingram or maybe a little less? I mean, or am I not seeing that right? And Worthy's got the better upside.
I mean, I love him. I could not take Worthy ahead of Bowers.
Yeah.
So, like, personally, I just don't think that's, like, people really love that landing spot with Worthy, and I get it. Going to the mad scientist Andy Reid, who's going to find ways to utilize Worthy's crazy speed and having Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. I understand the enticement there, but I couldn't personally take him over Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Bowers, before he was even drafted on, the consensus rankings, he was tight end 2. I always thought that was a little rich, right? I mean, but I understood it. I mean, in redraft, he's somewhere in the 8-ish range here. So, I mean, Brock Bowers, is Brock Bowers ranking a little bit more of a function of we saw rookie tight ends pop with the Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta, or do you really believe that this is a perennial top 5-ish, top 3-ish tight end for Dynasty?
I believe he is a perennial top 3-ish, top 5-ish guy. I mean, I remember first seeing him at Georgia and like just in a state of disbelief that he was only a freshman at the time, and being disappointed that we weren't going to get to draft him in rookie drafts for a couple more years. So, yeah, like I just think he's a phenomenal athlete. I know he didn't really do much of the testing, but any guy who can film himself doing the standing backflip like that is pretty sexy. But like, I don't think there's any doubt about his athleticism, and that he probably would have had, what Theo Johnson ran, like a 4.57. I think Bowers would have come in somewhere around that. So yeah, like, this guy's just really good, and he is a movable piece. You can line him up outside, inside, outside slot, in line, in the backfield. I mean, the guy had 5 rushing touchdowns at Georgia. So they're going to find creative ways to use him, and he's going to be terrific.
Yeah, I mean, it's been discussed on many podcasts, but the Brock Bowers is a bad landing spot was the initial reaction, which I was shocked. I was like, what's a good landing spot? Is it the Jets a good landing spot? I don't remember Aaron Rodgers using rookies or tight ends ever, right? I mean, very rare, except the year that, it's
Michael Finley.
Right. But he was going in the 4th round of single quarterback leagues before tight ends went in the 4th round of single quarterback leagues.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, I don't think it's a terrible landing spot. Yeah, they have one of the lesser quarterback situations in the league, but like, they'll get that figured out. That's the nice thing about Dynasty. You've got these longer runways for players to hit. And like, not that I think Bowers isn't going to be perfectly usable and playable in year 1, but eventually the Raiders will figure out the quarterback thing, and he'll be playing with someone better than Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell.
Right, but that's the other thing. Okay, Gardner Minshew might not be a quarterback that you can win a Super Bowl with, but for fantasy football, isn't he, I always use the comp to like Andy Dalton. Not that they have the same style of game, but a quarterback that's good enough to support AJ Green back in the day, right? It's not like anyone. So isn't Gardner Minshew like good enough to support a wide receiver 1? Like, I would be more worried if, I'm trying to think of like, if the Raiders had Mac Jones giving him his second opportunity, right? I'd be more worried about something like that. Minshew at least has got a little bit of Tyler Heineke to his game.
Yeah, good point, Alan. I mean, Michael Pittman investors were not disappointed with what they were getting last year, and Gardner Minshew was making maybe Minshew in that regard was even an upgrade from Anthony Richardson, at least from the perspective of Michael Pittman investors.
Okay. And we promised people taxi squad stashes, and we're going to talk about that. But I think that it's also, and that implies that it's like those guys you get late in your draft that you know are not going to produce immediately that you can put in the incubator. But I think there's a taxi squad stash in the first round of our rookie draft, Superflex, Pat, the Penix situation, right? I've seen him ranked by a lot of credible rankers, like pick 13 to 17 in Superflex. I was surprised. And again, I don't tell anyone they're wrong, they're right. I just see Penix in a different way. I'm curious if you're in a super flex draft, you won the league, or you were a Final Four team, meaning you have picked 10, 11, 12, something like that. Is Penix in play there, or is that just like, man, there's a lot of good other players there? What is your Penix take for people who are in rookie drafts right now and they're looking right at him around that pick 9, 10, 11, 12?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been consistently seeing him fall into the second, and I actually just got him in a Fantasy Pros in-house Dynasty League at pick 212.
Yeah,
but then someone immediately came in, and Alan, and offered me pick 307, maybe 307 or 308, their second and third next year for Penix, and I took it. Like,
single quarterback or Superflex?
Superflex, and yeah, like I did not. It was weird that he fell all the way to 212, and then for someone to throw a pretty substantial offer at me for him was so. Like, I think he is worth considering as early as the second round. I was maybe less offended by the Falcons move than a lot of people, because I'm not a big Kirk Cousins believer. Like, I understand he's a very competent fantasy quarterback. I think he's always been a better fantasy quarterback than real life quarterback. I really doubt the Falcons are starting Kirk Cousins at quarterback for 4 years for the entirety of his contract. That's not going to happen. And really, I mean, look at the rest of that division. I think if you can maintain the upper hand at quarterback, and start to get some of the other pieces in place, like you could own that division for quite a while. So I didn't think it was horrible. But, probably suboptimal. The thing was, it's sort of an incongruent position with your quarterbacks doing the big contract with Cousins and then taking a guy top 10.
Yeah, I think that the best criticism, and I agree with what you said there. I like the Penix pick once I digested it. The biggest criticism is, if you were the Atlanta Falcons, you knew, or you had a good, no one was talking about Penix as a top 7 pick. So you were going to have your crack at him, right? At pick 8. I mean, that was considered a quote reach. I know we heard some things that other teams were trying to trade up, but I think logically you could have said to yourself, there's a lot of JJ McCarthy trade up talk. No one taking Penix. And you knew that before you signed Kirk Cousins to that long-term contract. So something happened in those 5-6 weeks between the Cousins contract and the Penix pick. And if something's really going to change your mind that drastically, does that mean you didn't do the scouting work? Shouldn't you have they didn't play any more football. They didn't do any more testing. So what happened in those 6 weeks between the Cousins contract and the pick that was made for Penix that changed their mind so drastically? I think that's the fair criticism.
Yeah, total mystery. All I know is I think Ryan Pace is number 2 in the personnel department now with the Falcons, and having witnessed Ryan Pace's handiwork firsthand, I've almost got to think he played some role in this. Like, it was just a really strange move. I totally understand all the consternation over it, although, if I were a bigger Kirk Cousins fan, I would have a bigger issue with it.
All right. So, Pat, what's it called? Well, let's try the mic reset thing real quick. I'll talk to the people while you're doing it here. Yep. So yeah, I mean, you're saying so many good things, and I know that a couple people had mentioned it. Pat's working. Go ahead, Pat. I'll talk through this. Pat was just he's working through a little mic issue here. Thanks for those who are sticking here with us, and he's just going to go out, come back in. And listen, if it's still staticky, we'll do the best we can, and we do appreciate it. We know how annoying that could be on your ears, but Pat is he's so good with his analysis that I'm willing to work through. Anybody else? Listen, podcasters, if you come in with a dirty mic, we're never podcasting again. Pat's the exception, right? He could almost do anything, and we would have him here. We can have him with a tin can, and with 2 strings, and we'll still have Pat on. That's how much we admire what Pat has to say. So we're talking about taxi squad stashes, and I know we're about 20 minutes in. We haven't talked about those late guys, but I thought that Penix really is the first taxi squad stash, because when Pat was talking about him that he got him late in these rookie drafts. To me, I've been seeing him go off the board a little bit earlier in in the 40 leagues I'm in. I've had 8 drafts pop off, maybe like 12 at this point, and pick 8. I say, pick 10. And I think that the reason is because if Kirk Cousins wasn't there and Michael Penix was picked, where would he go? And I think that's what fantasy managers are saying to themselves. We could say it's not like with Justin Fields, right? Where we don't know if he's ever going to start at quarterback again. We think he might, but we're not 100% sure. Whereas Michael Penix is a taxi squad stash, because we know for a fact he is going to get a chance to play, and it could be with the more mature weapons. It could be Kyle Pitts heading into a contract year, Drake London at the peak of his powers, and Drake London's already considered wide receiver 10, 11 in Dynasty. So if he does realize that upside, man, Michael Penix would be right there in the mix, probably even going ahead of Drake Maye and JJ McCarthy. So when you draft Penix, it's almost like banking a next year's pick, like a 25 first. That's how I'm seeing it. So at pick 10, right, where would Penix go if he was declared the starter next year? He would be in the top 3 or 4 picks overall. So if you're taking him at 110, 111, let's get a test, Pat. There you are. Pat, you're back. Okay, he's still gearing up over there. So if you're taking Penix at pick 110, 111, it's almost like getting an early first the following year. Go ahead, you want to shout us? Go ahead, talk to us, Pat.
Yeah. Any better?
Oh my God. This is
hey, there we go. Clarity.
Yeah. I want to kiss you, Pat. Right now, I want to kiss you for doing that.
Yeah. Sorry about the technical issues. Not sure what's going on, but glad things are better now.
I think I figured it out. RotoWire and Fantasy Pros are friendly competitors, and you're trying to sabotage our podcast.
Of course. You sussed me out there, Alan.
Yeah. I'm going to get one of those robot voices that they used to put like on 60 Minutes when they would talk to like a spy, and I'm going to come on the podcast. That's what it sounded like. We should dark shadow you out and get the thing. So, but this really is Pat, everybody. All right, Pat, you're back, baby. All right. First round, we were talking about taxi squad stashes. I got a couple more questions that I have to ask you before we get to like the late round stashes, and we're going to put timestamps in here. Sure. So if you want to get right to the late round guys, just skip into the video and go to the end. And all right, JJ McCarthy versus Drake Maye. I've seen JJ go first, and this shocked me because I couldn't believe that Drake Maye is being considered. Is it the stinky landing spot perception? Do you think that's what's going on? And what are you seeing in your drafts?
I do think so. I do think it's that. I'm consistently seeing McCarthy go ahead of Maye. Yeah,
do you agree with it?
Like, I prefer Maye. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was it. I said, do you agree with it?
Oh, I like Maye more as an overall prospect. I understand that McCarthy landed in a pretty ideal place with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, eventually TJ Hawkinson, whereas Maye has a questionable group of pass catchers, an offensive line that I think PFF graded 31st in pass blocking last year. Kind of a tough spot. So I reluctantly moved McCarthy ahead of Maye in my rookie rankings. I did. And
but
I know. I think, were it not for the fact that Thor Nystrom, who you know well, our in-house NFL draft and college football analyst, loves JJ McCarthy. And if Thor had not been honking JJ McCarthy's horn to such an extent, I would not have had the courage to move McCarthy past Maye.
And I can't fault you for that, Pat, because when influential and let's call it like these rookie these people that we trust with rookie evaluation say something. Listen, that has to be part of our process. I don't have the time or the knowledge to do what Thor does, so if he's going to do that heavy lifting work for me, and I have trust in him, I have to adjust. It doesn't mean I have to defer to him. So I understand that happens all the time at RotoWire when there's our rookie nuts. Really are in or out on a player, it just at least makes me take another look because, listen, I mean, but with Maye, the only thing, and again, this is going down narrative street, was last year we said something very similar about Houston Texans being a poor landing spot, and that caused a lot of people, and that's a code for me, to take Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. In a one dynasty league, I ruined my team that way, which obviously Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud. Try trading for CJ Stroud right now, Pat. You got to pay Pat Mahomes prices.
Yeah, exactly. And I did the same thing, Alan. Like I took Young over Stroud in one of my drafts, and like I kind of fell ass backward into CJ Stroud in another dynasty rookie draft. So we did think Houston was a terrible landing spot, and we were dead wrong about that. And like that was the crazy thing that sort of made me think CJ Stroud might be really good when early last year, if you'll recall, like the Texans had like 4 starting offensive linemen hurt. I'm like, oh my God, CJ Stroud is going to get killed in his first couple of games. And he actually played pretty respectably. Like, all right, this kid might be pretty good if he's surviving this and actually like putting up decent numbers. Sure enough, he turned out to be pretty good.
When people hear taxi squad stashes, Pat, they think of like 4th and 5th round picks, but listen, a lot of taxi squads are only 3 deep. You don't really have a lot of room to hold those guys for more than the offseason. I mean, I'm having to dump Isaiah Spiller this year, right? I mean, you might say, oh, that's an obvious call, but Tank Bigsby might not make my roster because I don't have spaces to hold them. So I want to start with the earlier stashes. The guys, once you get into like, the end of the second round, early third round. I mean, there's players we like, but there's players that aren't going to play that well right there. So give me a name of somebody that you like, that the community likes, that you already know he's going on your taxi squad, not onto your active roster as we get into, the season and we have to cut down.
Yeah, maybe a guy I'd put into that category would be Jalen McMillan. Who I believe he went to the Buccaneers in the 3rd round. So day 2 draft capital, and we like him. And McMillan was a guy who actually played ahead of Jalen Polk, who was an early 2nd round pick, until McMillan had this knee issue. I think it was a sprained MCL last fall at Washington, and tried to play through it. Wasn't able to do so effectively. They shut him down. I think they might have like shut him down twice, kind of shut him down once, came back, still having issues, shut him down again. And that's kind of when Jalen Polk popped. But back in 2022, Jalen McMillan actually had more catches and touchdowns than Rome Odunze for Washington. So like he is good, and he sort of specializes in being a zone beater. And with the amount of zone coverage we see in the NFL these days, I mean, there's a path to success for Jalen McMillan. I just don't think we see it in 2024 with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin around.
But there's really no tight end of note there. I like McMillan. He's a player that I didn't even thought about in my draft. So I like that you're calling him out. And this is what I'm talking about. I know that some podcast, and we'll get there, to like, hey, this is, grab this guy that you've barely ever heard of, UDFA. But these are the players that when we're on the clock, that we know about Jalen McMillan's name, but never, like the fact that he outproduced Polk, right? And that Polk only popped once he was gone. There is room for a third receiver in Tampa, right? And now with a new offensive coordinator, who knows what's going to happen here. So I like that. And listen, I love Mike Evans as much as the next, and I don't believe he's going to fall off, but at some point, I mean, we see it happen all the time. And I'm not saying, McMillan's in there, but that is a perfect stash because with our taxi squads, that's the purpose of it. We don't have to worry about a roster squeeze for usually at least 2 years. So that's I don't have any McMillan yet, but you can basically pick the spot you want him in the 3rd round.
Pretty much. Yeah. He routinely goes late 3rd, maybe early 4th, but like I do think he's got a pretty bright future. And we thought Mike Evans was maybe starting to hit the age cliff in 2022 when he went through that long stretch. I forget how many games it was without a touchdown, like 9 games or so. And it was the longest TD drought of his career. People were like, uh-oh, is he done? And then after being faded badly in drafts last year, he had this nice comeback season with Baker Mayfield. But yeah, I mean, he's not going to be there forever. And so, yeah, I think McMillan eventually plays a bigger role.
So when you're on the clock and you're looking at someone like McMillan, is there a running back that goes around the cost that you've been looking at? Like what's the decision you're making at that point in the draft, that late third, mid third, late, early fourth, McMillan or running back? Like who is that running back?
Oh man.
Is it Bucky? Is it Shipley? Is it Estime?
Shipley is probably good. Shipley and Estime would probably be the guys I would think would go right around there.
Yeah.
Like Estime is I don't know, potentially kind of interesting as a committee back just because it's easy to see his potential value in the NFL as a touchdown scorer. Like not a guy who you can see racking up 1,500 yards from scrimmage, because I don't think he's ever going to have that sort of role in the passing game. But like, it's not hard to imagine Estime at some point in his career having a double-digit touchdown season. And then Shipley, look, Saquon Barkley has gotten hurt a lot. Philadelphia is a pretty good ecosystem for a running back. And like, is it that hard to imagine him beating out Kenny Gainwell?
No, but that's the thing. So you think that's the part. So, okay. So Barkley, I think we can pencil. What's the under over on his games? 14.5 is a reasonable number of games started, active games, right? I think that's for any workhorse running back. It's, so what would happen? Would Shipley, I don't know much about the player other than the community likes him, right? And he's on a quote, good team. So would Shipley be the type of player, Pat, that's automatically the starter, or it would be like a committee with Shipley having the more upside should Barkley miss a game?
Yeah, I think it would probably be a committee. It's hard to see Shipley ever being a full-time do-it-all running back, although he does have he can be a pass catching guy. He's a guy who could potentially play on any down. Okay. But I just don't know if he's good enough to ever be a guy that you basically turn your backfield over to.
All right, so now let's get out of that second, early third round. Give me another guy in the third round, because when you take a player in the third round, sometimes you end up with the David Bell, right? That type where, man, it just never has a chance, and you just have to clip them. So we already know that that's the downside. Who's somebody in that range right there? Any position, Pat, that you're stashing on your taxi squad that you have a little bit more of an optimistic view on?
All right, so I've only done one draft that's gotten through 3 rounds, Alan. So I'm not sure where the rookie draft ADP is come in at, but
it's the wild, wild west, Pat. There is no. I've seen someone, I won't call it names, but I've seen certain players go at 210 and 410, the same player. So there is no ADP yet.
All right, so we'll throw out Braelon Allen.
Yes.
As a guy who was routinely being mocked in pre-draft rookie drafts, late seconds, early third.
Pat,
and now
4.2 in a $100 league I'm in right now. That's where he went. 4.2.
Okay. All right, so we're talking about the neighborhood that you outlined, Alan. I mean, this is a guy who will not turn 21 years old until January. He's going to play the entirety of his rookie year at age 20, which I think made him the youngest player at any position in this entire draft class. And yet I think Braelon Allen had more 100-yard games in college than any other back in this class. So now the limitations are obvious. Like, he is not a pass catcher. They tried getting him involved in the passing game when, like during Braelon Allen's college career, they went from like power I classic Big Ten offense to this spread offense that Phil Longo runs in Madison these days. And like, they try to use Allen a little bit as a pass catcher, and it's just not his thing. His hands are okay, but there's just no fluidity there. It's hard for him to like catch the ball and quickly turn into a runner after the catch. But big dude, not slow. We don't really know what his time speed is, since he didn't test either at the combine or his pro day, but like, he's not a complete slug. Like a little bit of shiftiness, but maybe not always as powerful as you want him to be. Had some fumbling issues in college, like not major fumbling issues, and mainly just like for a bigger dude, he would get dinged a lot. Like no major injuries, but like he would have to leave the field a lot, maybe because he runs a little too upright, and sometimes it take a lot of, big surface area for a guy of that size, guy who played at like 240 pounds. But again, as with Audric Estime, it's not easy to, or it's not hard to imagine a back like Braelon Allen at some point in his career scoring double-digit touchdowns. But of course, he goes to the Jets, which is just, the Jets seem intent on just burying rookie running back value, Alan. We need to get some sort of restraining order against the Jets from drafting any more running backs, because a lot of people like Isaiah Davis too.
Yeah. It's better than signing a bunch of dudes, right? It's better than signing Dalvin Cook last year.
Yeah. Let me get your take on this. Do you think the Jets taking 2 running backs in this class when they have a top 3 running back is an indication that maybe they're not going to have Breece Hall be one of the most prolific workhorses, or at least not a guy who has a shot at leading the NFL in carries, that they want to maybe manage his workload a little bit? Or do you think this is an organization that's maybe, after, losing Aaron Rodgers 3 snaps into the 2023 season, a little more sensitive to the possibilities of disaster when they lose a key skill player, and just trying to, insurance policy?
Yeah, no, I think that with Breece Hall, that's really it's alarming, right? When they do 2 draft picks, but they were late round draft picks, and
sure.
It's I think Breece Hall is insulated pretty much because of the pass catching upside, right? And he did it with Zach Wilson. Our biggest complaint is when a player doesn't produce that's elite, it's because, look at the quarterback situation. He did it under the worst of circumstances. So even if Breece Hall is not Christian McCaffrey this year, or beat him in fantasy points, I think that, there's still like a high floor. That's why you take him in the first round. And I would also ask you that, are either of the running backs that the Jets drafted, and I don't know the answer to this, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, are they considered good pass blocking running backs at all? Because we know sometimes that when, running backs, they're not, coaches get them because they're good blockers. They stay on the field. So to your knowledge, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, with Braelon Allen, was he known as at least a average pass blocker?
Yeah, I think he was.
There you go.
He was very willing to do that, and I think he was capable of it. And guys are not going to run over a 240 pounder in the backfield. Like, he's basically, the guys who they are sending as blitzers are no bigger than Braelon Allen. So yeah, like he was decent in that capacity. I don't know about Isaiah Davis.
Right. Well, so just let's go with Braelon Allen for a minute here. So we already know that the Jets had the horrible offensive line, and then they basically found some old wood in the back here that was in the 30-plus-year-old guys. And then they drafted somebody who might be a little, might not get up to speed right away. And every snap matters with Aaron Rodgers. We learned that last year. Sure. Do you remember, by the way, the free square on some of the pick'em sites was Aaron Rodgers a half a yard last year? Like they gave you the free square. I hit a 5. I don't think they called them parlays, but 5 matches, except I lost on my free square of Aaron Rodgers. He needed a half a yard to hit. I thought maybe they would refund the money. Nope. Listen, thanks for playing. You're out. So, yeah. So point is, the Jets may have drafted these guys because it's almost like an extra quasi lineman. I'm taking Breece Hall he's my dynasty RB1 for sure. And I would consider him over Christian McCaffrey in some drafts if I'm doing like, a portfolio of drafts. So
sure.
Not worried about that at all. And you talked about Braelon Allen. First of all, I think this is the stash right here. I think you hit these. He wasn't on my list, but I'm going to take him as my own stash too, because if he's going in the 4th round and he does have, like, Breece Hall's been injured for season before, right? So it's, if the Jets get goal line opportunities, he could also be that hammer back too. So it's so easy to see like a 685-yard season with 9 touchdowns for Braelon Allen, right? It's there. It's there waiting for him.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, Alan, I think people get offended when guys don't test.
Right.
And like not testing, like, sort of tanked Braelon Allen's prospect cred. Then couple that with the bad landing spot, and now there's serious disinterest in Braelon Allen.
Yep. You had said that he wasn't like a prolific pass catcher. I usually use the number 25 as the receptions as, okay, he can do it. He was at 28 last year. And again, you could ask me, how'd you get to that number? I don't know. It's just kind of like the number I've seen with these guys, like the Nick Chubbs. As long as they get to like Braelon Allen can catch the football. You said it wasn't fluid at all, but 28 receptions in a college season is above that Mendoza line. I know in the previous seasons he had 13 and 8. So I wouldn't call that necessarily, it's not a positive, but I don't think it's a negative just looking at that specific one number.
Yeah, it makes me think of, Alex Dunlap of Roster Watch has sworn to me that he saw Derek Allen like in high school, like catching passes very competently, looking very good at it. And, but he's just never been asked to be a prolific pass catcher. Maybe there were like his last couple of years in Tennessee, they asked him to do a little bit more of that, but just never really used him in that capacity. I think it is maybe the same thing with Braelon Allen. Like he can catch, his hands aren't frying pans, but why would you've got a back like this. Why are you trying to get him the ball out wide in space when you can just give it to him and let him batter people between the tackles?
Yep. So time for just a quick bill pay here. Prize Picks is sponsoring the Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast today. And instead of reading a whole thing, if you've listened to fantasy football content, you've heard Prize Picks on every podcast and every SiriusXM radio show. Our code is ROTOPOD, ROTOPOD. They get a match. Do you play these pick'em games? I have gotten into them a little bit more over the last 6 months. I used to not play them, but are you a Prize Picks player at all, even just casually, Pat?
Well, Thor Nystrom convinced me to bet a lot of the testing props on Prize Picks. So that is most of my Prize Picks activity has been combine props.
When you do the Prize Picks game, do you usually go for 2, 3, or do you just try to light it up and get 5?
Smaller amounts.
Yeah,
I'm generally not a parlay bettor, so I minimize it.
Right. And then they also have the option to, like, if you get one wrong, you get a little less. I mean, I stupidly do the, bet a little, win a lot type of thing on the Moors. And also, I think similar, like you've heard this thing in sports betting where the overs are juiced because no one likes to root for punts. Do you think that the Moors are juiced a little bit? I mean, again, you don't know for fact, but do you think that, like, I like to bet the less thans because I feel like more people just pick the more thans?
I'm with you, Alan. I'm kind of a natural born under better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as Chris Raybon once said, like, the nice thing, a lot of people don't like to bet unders, but the nice thing about unders, as Chris Raybon once, I heard him say, you're always winning until you're not. So I kind of like the unders. I don't know.
Right. But you've never lost until it's over. Right? Once you bet an over and you win in the third quarter, it's over, baby. You don't even need to watch the rest of the game. Do you remember something back in the day? And I've asked people on this podcast, no one's ever heard of it. Do you ever remember something called a lightning bet? Is that term ever come across your desk? Nobody's ever heard. You're not the only one here, Pat. So a lightning bet used to be a bet you could make where, just say, like, the Knicks and the Celtics were playing, and like a typical under over for let's say it was 190, or let's say it's 210, right? 210. And you do a $5 lightning bet. So every point over the 210, you get $5. But every point that it comes under the 210, you lose $5. So, I mean, you get a good overtime game, Pat, and forget about it.
Yeah, you tilt that thing like a pinball machine.
Machine. Exactly. But how scary is that? I had a buddy that did a $50 lightning bet on a basketball game when we were in college. And it was one of those, like, Knicks, Pistons, 68-72, and he just got slaughtered. I think I've never heard from him again after that.
Yeah, those NBA games in the 90s, where that was not the most fun era for betting overs in NBA games.
All right, let's do a couple more quick taxi squad stashes, but we're going to be right back in a short minute. Just stick with us. YouTube audience, we're not stopping. Podcast audience, we'll be back right after this. All right, we're back. We're talking taxi squad stashes. Pat, before we do that, real quick, what do you tend to hold on to those late rookie picks, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, or do you sometimes if somebody gets hot for a player on the clock, you can just, hey, you make the pick, give me your pick next year? Because 3rd round picks, 4th round picks, sometimes it's not about, like, the player you draft, but it could also be about using them in season to get, like, a deal done. All right, just throw me your 3rd and we'll do this deal. So what's your feeling generally on late round picks?
Yeah, unless I'm really zeroed in on one guy in the late rounds that I feel strongly about. I'm willing to flip those picks for sure. If people are hot and heavy to get their guy, their favorite late round stash. Like I'm happy to like burn a fourth this year for a third next year.
Totally.
If there's not anyone I'm just totally in love with and don't have a screaming need at, don't need like a backup tight end or sixth wide receiver or something. So yeah, I don't mind flipping those picks for future picks.
That's what the Dolphins did with Jalen Wright, right? They basically traded their third next year for the fourth round this year. They made a dynasty trade in real life. So
yeah, we saw that in a couple instances. Didn't the Lions do that too to get
did they? I missed
Sion Vaki, the guy who's the combination safety running back. I want to say that was the guy they traded like a fourth next year for a third this year, or maybe it was a fifth next year for.
No, you got it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was, but yeah, we saw that a couple of times. So yeah, life imitating art, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. There will be a prominent fantasy person that has a front-facing real life NFL position soon. Like in the next 10 years, it's happening. So
that would be fun. That would be fun. And then, when that person does terribly and has bad drafts, we can, criticize. That's sort of happened with Mike Mayock, right? He was the commentator, and I always thought Mayock's analysis was brilliant. And then he gets injured. We don't know to what extent he was actually calling the shots, and to what extent he was just a puppet of John Gruden, but didn't work out as we had hoped, I guess.
It's similar to when like a presidential candidate that you love gets into office and then they do nothing they said they were going to do. It's because the deep state gets them and says, listen, if you don't do it this way, you've heard of JFK, right? Like you've heard of that guy, right? Like, so it's similar. The Mayock, brilliant analysis, gets in the position like, listen, this is not how it works, dude. So totally get it. Not that we believe the CIA ever did anything, I would, so we don't want them coming to our house. All right, Pat, lightning round here. Give me a couple guys I can get in that fourth, fifth round here that they're literally dart throws. We have no expectation, but there is an upside case, and we're going to put them on our taxi squad.
Devontae Walker.
Yes.
Tez Walker. Size, speed, good ball tracker, really raw. But you like that a team that tends to be considered one of the better drafting teams in the league in Baltimore gets him and picks him in the fourth round. So I think he's a real appealing swing.
I like that. The team, like, let's trust the team. That's why I like Roman Wilson, not as a taxi squad, but Pittsburgh non-day one wide receivers. That's like a thing, right? And it's going to be a thing until it's not a thing. Okay, Tez Walker, that's a good one. He had not been on my radar. I got to get a little Tez in my 41 drafts. Someone else.
Maybe
another one. Okay.
Jacob Cowing goes to the
San Fran.
Yeah, the 49ers. So it's hard to see his path to playing time. But he was really productive in college, had a 1,300-yard season for UTEP as like a redshirt sophomore. Had, 85 catches for 1,034 yards and 7 touchdowns at Arizona in 2022. Kind of got diminished a little bit because Arizona has this future first-round pick now at wide receiver named Tediroa McMillan, who, I mean, this guy is someone we're going to be excited about in a couple of years for rookie drafts. And, he diminished Cowing's role in 2023, but small guy, small receiver, but I could see him carving out like a slot role.
Pat, you are a walking pronunciation guide. That was unbelievable.
I don't know if I got Tediroa McMillan's first name right or not.
All right, let's test. Yeah, what's Tua's last name?
Tungavailoa.
See, yeah, you said that like you were just talking about, like, give me a slice of pizza and a soda. I mean, that was unbelievable. That used to be a hard one. What were some other hard ones that no one can get or got it wrong? I guess Devon A-Chain is a thing, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, A-Chain was such a cool name. I still have trouble with A-Chan.
You know what it is? A-Chain to A-Chan is like calling Twitter X. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and of course, TJ Hushmanzada was the ultimate.
Who's your mama, right? Remember the commercial, right?
Yes, yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, no, I love. So with we got sent a pronunciation guide by RotoWire by the guys at SiriusXM because obviously you want to say it right, but I like when people screw up names. I think it's funny, it makes me laugh. But I know that there is, it could hurt credibility in the eyes of some people.
Yeah, my stepdad, avid sports enthusiast, but he is the king of malaprops with last names. So it's always fun to hear him pronounce some of these guys.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's cool. All right, give me one. Actually, I'm going to ask you about one. I want to
Sure.
draft Malik Washington in a lot of my drafts. He's going easily. You could pick your spot in the 4th round. What do you lead the nation in receptions, I believe, and ends up in the Miami Dolphins. Normally a 6th-round wide receiver. It's like that's like a laughing cross him off your list, but you could easily see him. Jalen, Waddle, and Tyreek Hill both miss time at certain times of their career. And there's no 3rd receiver. They've been trying to find one. I mean, there hasn't been a tight end there, that's really done anything. Could he be someone that's at least like a handcuff wide receiver?
I think so because
Good.
Like you, Alan, I mean, I'm drawn to these guys who are basically their college team's offense. Like he was the entirety of the Virginia offense last year at 120 receptions or whatever. And just, it was weird because he played sort of in my backyard at Northwestern University and didn't really do much there. Although Northwestern's offense was just complete trash while he was there, goes to Virginia and just lights it up. So really productive. And I think everyone, like scouts seem to like his game a lot. Not a great situation on the surface of it, playing behind Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, but down the line, yeah, like he's a jewel of a taxi squad stash, I think.
He'll be the DFS darling when Waddle's ruled out on like Thursday, right? For the Saturday thing. You'll be like, $2,000 Malik Washington.
Yeah, I could see him being a preseason DFS darling too.
Yes, but it'll be expensive. He'll be expensive
when they're going to want to play Tyreek Hill for 0 snaps. And yes, exactly.
Pat, how long you been doing this for? How did you end up at Fantasy Pros? Like I said, I'd heard your name many times, and obviously I've gotten to know you a little bit better over the last few years. But what is a little bit of your origin story in fantasy?
Yeah, circuitous role, Alan, but I actually started doing this in the late 90s at Pro Football Weekly when I was working there as an associate editor. But fantasy was kind of maybe 15% for me. We had like a main fantasy writer, and I just did some of the online stuff and some of the magazine planning for fantasy. But like that was my first toe in the water. Left Pro Football Weekly after a couple of years, but continued to freelance for them on the fantasy side for a long time after that. So, and Fantasy Pros has only been like 2-3 years. Was working with Melissa Jacobs of the Football Girl for a while, putting stuff up on her site. So, it's been kind of a.
It's funny you say you said you've only been at Fantasy Pros for like 2-3 years, but I don't know. You must be doing a great job of branding it, because when I think of Fantasy Pros now, I think of you, I think of Debro, like all the other. I think of Joey P. It's funny how media and marketing, like you guys have done a really great job, because 5-7 years ago, it was Tags, there was other guys there, and you guys have done such a great job of rebranding. I do admire what you do from a broadcast perspective. Obviously, I enjoy your company and your takes as well. So I was just curious how it all started for you. And I'm going to prove to everyone right now, even though you've been around a long time, Fitz, right, that you still are hip and young at heart. And because I'm going to test you right now on some Gen Z slang. We're going to play a little game to close out the podcast. All right.
Okay. All right, I've got high school kids, so hopefully
that's what I'm saying. All right, so Gen Z slang. All right,
let's do it.
Now, I'm going to give you the term, and you just, to your best of your ability, describe it or just say I don't know, because I wrote down I have the answers here. All right, what is ick? ICK, ick.
So I'm going to guess it's not what I would imagine it to be. So I got to say I don't know.
Okay, it's when you're turned off to something. So if I said, what's your football ick? And you might say, hey, when someone has a definitive take. So that's your ick. It's like you're grossed out by it, or you're
I should have guessed. I could have figured that one out.
Okay. How about, I'll give you some. If something's mid.
Yeah, mediocre. Yeah, that one I hear a lot of around the house.
Average, right? Average. Okay. How about this one? All right, we're talking about Gen Z slang with Pat to show you how hip he still is. How about Riz? What's Riz? RIZZ. Riz.
Oh man, I know that's good. I know it's good, but I could not come up with a formal definition for that one, Alan.
So it means charisma.
Okay.
Charisma. So if something is, you're charismatic or smooth. Makes sense, right? Okay.
Okay. Yes.
You're up for a few more of these, I hope.
Sure.
You're doing good. All right. I'll give you one that I think is, how about if something's cap, C-A-P, cap, or you're capping?
That one I've not heard.
Capping means you're lying.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So if someone says, like, if you say something and I totally agree with it, I say no cap.
No cap. Okay.
All right. So bring it, or if you see someone respond with like the emoji baseball hat, that means they think you're lying. Because it's a cap.
All right. I gotta next time I think my kids aren't giving it to me straight. I gotta lay that one on.
Stop capping, tell them. All right, let's do like
the eye roll I'm gonna get from my daughter when I give that one to her. Oh,
yep. All right. So we'll go a couple more of these. All right. If something hits different, what does that mean? If it hits different?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm familiar with that one. It's I think that's pleasurable sort of reaction to something, right?
Yeah, you're feeling it deep. Like if you hear a song that you really like who's your favorite band of all time, Pat, or one of your favorites?
Oh man, how about the Replacements?
So you could say the Replacements, they hit different.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that works. I like it. I like
it.
Right.
Let's go two more.
Okay.
If you say, okay, here's a good one. If you allow someone to cook, let them cook. What does that mean?
Yeah, do their thing, right? Let Russ cook.
You got it. It's the definition. The Urban Dictionary says, give them space to do what they do.
Okay, good.
All right. So you hit that one. I'll give you another one that I think you're to get. If someone eats, what does that mean?
Oh, kind of the same thing, right? Given the opportunity to do their thing and
keep going.
Allowed to fully exercise their talents.
Yeah. If they eat, so you're on the right track, it means they've exceeded their performance, the expected performance.
Okay.
Yeah. And then another way of saying that is they understood the assignment.
Okay. I like it.
Okay. Last one. Let me see what I got here. All right. If something is lit.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's, fired up. This party is lit. This album is lit. Although I just blew my cover with Gen Z because no one's making album references. This song is lit.
It's all singles. Right. What's this album you speak of, Pat?
Exactly.
Yeah. Lit is the Urban Dictionary is something that's poppin' or trendy. Poppin' or trendy. It's lit, which is exactly what you said. All right. I'm going to give you a B to B+ on your Gen Z knowledge.
Generous. You're a generous grader. I appreciate that, Alan. Thank you.
All right, man. Let's end the podcast with two things. One, give me a running back, right? So we're talking taxi squad stashes. Running back that you're not hearing a lot across all media and content, that you're in the 5th round, 4th round of your draft, and it's the Ty Chandler. It's the Khalil Herbert, someone that it may not hit now, but in 3 years, I'm hoping I can get 2 or 3 starts when it matters most. Who's that taxi squad stash?
Yeah, does Dylan Laube count?
Oh, yes, that counts.
The New Hampshire guy. And like we might not even have to wait that long, Alan, because like we've got Zamir White right now lined up to be the starter for the Raiders. And White is pretty one-dimensional. Like he was an early down hammer in college. And so I think Laube might play on passing downs right away. I mean, he's got to beat out Amir Abdullah, who's been around in kind of a zero role for a long time. And like Laube tested really well at the combine. He was kind of a late bloomer at New Hampshire, but like productive small school back for a couple of years. So I'm kind of intrigued by him. Like, I guess that would be my first choice.
I like that one a lot too, because he was a college wide receiver. Or he was just a prolific pass catcher? Something like that, right?
I think prolific pass. He might have started out as a wide receiver.
Okay. There's one guy that was like they're trying to do the Antonio Gibson thing with him. I'm trying to think who it is. I'm sure if you're listening.
Tyrone Tracy from Purdue.
Tell me about him.
Yeah, I mean, Thor Nystrom really liked him. Pre-draft, I think he was Thor's running back 5 in this class. And just like really athletic, has that pass catching background. I think Antonio Gibson is the natural comparison, but yeah, like this guy's got great athletic testing numbers, and it's just, you might have to be patient with him a little bit. But another guy like Laube going into a team that might immediately have a vacancy for a 3rd down back with the Giants, like that, I could see Tracy playing right away in 2024.
I mean, our dynasty taxi squads are littered with guys like Eric Gray and Evan Hull from last year, but you have to be ready to turn those guys over and try new guys. Because I mean, I know Hull was hurt right away last year, but would you rather, if you only have one taxi spot, would you rather have Tracy or Evan Hull on it?
I'd rather have Tracy. Hull versus Laube would be, that would be a little tougher. Like, I haven't totally snuffed out the candle for Evan Hull.
Okay.
Another Northwestern guy. So I saw him play a lot, and he basically was the Northwestern offense for a couple of years. So I haven't abandoned hope for him just yet.
Follow Pat as I do on Twitter, or I call it. I don't call it Twitter. I call it the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. Right.
Good call. I like that.
Right, because that has
more
like right. It's got the Prince sort of thing going on there, so it has a little. At Fitz FITZ _FF at Fitz _. And what's one piece of content or something that you want to call everyone's attention to right now?
Oh man, right now, just check out the Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast with myself, Ryan Wormley, and Scott Bogman. We just did a pretty good episode on how we have adjusted our rookie rankings based on draft results.
Okay. Well, Fitz, I have the guys on here who I enjoy listening to. So you're a part of my weekly content consumption. And I appreciate you giving me time here because, like I said, I just enjoy you, but I also love how you think about the game of football and specifically Dynasty. So thanks again for joining us here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alan. And I enjoy your work too and listening to you. And I'm glad we've gotten to be friends. So it was great to, we've done these big podcast mock drafts where there's 6 of us. Great to get rid of the riffraff and just you and I get to chop it up one-on-one. So
cool. And I do appreciate that. Cool. The love fest. We're having such a love fest today, Pat. So I want to let everybody know also right now you can get behind RotoWire's paywall for free. Just go to rotowire.com/pod, rotowire.com/pod. Just put in your email. Paywall unlocks. There's no credit card to put in. You just check out all of our premium content. If you like it, you stay. If not, you don't, right? You guys have something similar going on for Fantasy Pros, right? You can kind of get over there. There's so many good free tools over there. What's the best tool that you like over at Fantasy Pros?
Oh my God. Draft Wizard. Like, just
that thing is awesome.
Yeah, being able to do mocks now and being able to do rookie mocks, like pretty much any type of mock. I know my son in July will do like 4,000 mock drafts on our Draft Wizard.
Do you remember the days of when there was no best ball or it wasn't like a thing, and the only way you could just do your seasonal mocks was like I forget, there was before ESPN there was like Mock Draft Central. You'd have to go on there and just like it was only allowed you to do 2 mocks a day.
Yeah, was it a bunch of randos who would then do stupid picks and
right? Tom Tebow 1.1
torpedo the value of the mock. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And then, but now it's like you have your best ball, and eventually there'll be something where we could do our like you said, these tools. RotoWire is building out a rookie tool as well. So, all right, everybody, we'll see you next week with another Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast.